How does someone go from a stable job in banking to traveling the world, eat, pray, love style, and ending up in Bali for 3 years during COVID? And how do you heal from losing a loved one when you're still trying to find your way in life and figuring out what spirituality means for you? Elies Hadi tells her story of going from a seminar junkie and banking professional to gazing into the stars one beautiful, dark, silent night in Bali, and suddenly feeling like she was being watched over and supported by what she now calls her star family. You're listening to Wisdom Without the Guru, and I'm your host, Regina. Welcome, Elise, and thank you so much for being here. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for having
So
me, Regina. Yeah, it's so
you're
exciting.
you're joining from Indonesia, right?
Yes,
Yes. Okay. You're not having monsoon weather in Indonesia right now?
comes and go. You know how it goes in
Oh,
tropical island. Either it rains or it
yeah.
doesn't.
Well, listen, we have known each other for about 10 years, I would think, something like
I
that.
would think so.
So I
Yeah,
know
yeah.
Elise from when I lived in Singapore. I'm living in Belgium now, and before I lived in Singapore for 9 years. And during that time, I had a holistic center, and Elise dropped in, and I got to know her that way. And she attended some of the courses, and then she was just part of the whole spiritual community. And that's how we got to meet. And then she even came to see me here in Belgium after I moved, which was kind of cool. She
Yes.
discovered our forests, which was nice. So, welcome again. I'm really, really happy for you to be here and to be on this podcast, sharing your wisdom of your life experiences with anybody who's listening. So, let's just jump in and say, when did you first begin your personal development and spirituality exploration? I mean, how old were you?
My first personal development seminar, I believe I was something like maybe 19. I was like in the early years of college. It was just, somebody invited me and then we went and I love it. So I've started from then, work on a lot of the mindset, personal development stuff. And I only really got into what we call spirituality perhaps around late 2000s. I can't remember exactly when, but
Hmm.
it was really interesting because the very first time it happened was a colleague of mine back then when I was in the bank invited me to a meditation. And she was like, oh, it's free and it's in Orchard Road in one of the apartment. I was like, okay, we went together and I fell asleep within 2 minutes and I slept throughout the entire 60 minutes. And I, I know, right?
I'm
And so
not sure
I
if that's
told my
good.
friend, exactly. No, I was like, it's a waste of time. I might as well sleep at home in my bed. Like, why would I come here and sleep for 60 minutes? Like, to me, I was like, nothing happened. Like, so forget it. So I totally like never go back for the second time. I wasn't
Hmm.
even interested. But I was in the email list of the person who was hosting it, and then she kept sending email, and I didn't unsubscribe for whatever reason, which is interesting, despite me not wanting to go. Until one fine day, she suddenly sent something called chakra workshop. And I was like, oh, this piqued my interest. So I went to the chakra workshop, and from then on, I started like doing meditation, and then eventually it was actually Gladys. I think you know her, right? So
Mm,
she was
yes,
also the
yes.
one who told me about you, like there's this amazing lady who has this awesome shop, and that's how I get to know Regina. And yeah, that's kind of like
Oh, thank you,
how I got
Gladys.
started. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
But
and actually, oh, I don't have it with me. She bought me a bookmark from your shop, and it was one
oh,
of those horoscope one, the Gemini, because I'm a Gemini, so she bought like the
hmm,
Gemini one. And obviously it's so pretty, and I'm like, I need to go to this shop now. It's like,
I remember those. That was a tarot creator that had done those bookmarks, I believe.
ah,
So listen, um, were the people around you into what you were exploring as well, or were you kind of on your own? I mean, your friends or your colleagues, or did they even know you
I
were doing
was
this?
No, so my colleagues definitely know. And even my close friends, I had my best friend back then, like she knew I went to meditation, but that's kind of like that's about it. I didn't talk about the angels or dragons and all of those woo stuff. Because meditation, people know it and people
Mm,
are okay. And however, I will say I'm pretty blessed in the sense that the community there was good. So it's like, although I feel alone
mm.
outside the community, but I knew there is a community that help me, support me, that makes me not feel alone. So it's like, yes, I'm alone, but not alone, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. Singapore, I mean, I don't know about now, obviously, because I've been gone for 7.5 years. Singapore had a great spiritual community, and everybody did something different. But I thought that we all came together at, these festivals, and everybody would pop by
Mhm.
everybody else's store, and probably check out the competition at the same time, but also just to say hi.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so I think that that is the part of Singapore that I miss the most is that community. And of course, Singapore being small with 6 million people, you still have the ability to have a group, whereas when you're in a very large country, it's with all these different cities everywhere, it's a bit,
Mhm.
I find it, for me, it's a bit more difficult. But anyway, so I was reading your website. I did read your website. And I know one of the things that you say was a key turning point for you was when you lost your dad. So can you
Mhm.
talk about that a bit? Why? I mean, what point do you think you were in your exploration of yourself and this whole idea of spirituality when your dad passed? Because I know, like, when my sister passed, it was just starting for me and I didn't know how to handle it. But then, 6 or 7 years later, when my mother died, I was in a completely different spot and I reacted a totally different way. So, how was it for you?
Mhm. I lost my father when I was around 21, I think. And I didn't know how to deal with it. So at the time, I was
Mm.
still hasn't I only started personal development. I had no idea of spirituality or what's not. So to me, death means death, like I lost someone physically,
Okay.
right? And so I dealt with it the way I knew how, which was how I dealt with breakups, which I wasn't exactly the most experienced at the time too. So I did
Mm.
allow myself to cry, but then
That is a
I
kind of
thought,
breakup.
yeah, but I thought it is as simple as that, meaning like I thought, if I just let myself cry for a month, I can get over it. So
Mm.
like I did allow myself that maybe 1 month or something like that to cry and everything. But eventually, I kind of move on. So I mean, so-called move on, right? Quote unquote, and move on. And I thought that was okay. I thought like the wound is healed, like it is done. You move on like the way you move on to the next boyfriend. Nope, that's not the case. So I didn't even know that because I didn't have the awareness, right? And it was until when I started spirituality, which is maybe I don't know a good maybe 10 years later or less, maybe seven,
Mm.
eight, something like yours, when I was already in the spirituality, that in one of the workshop that I was in, suddenly, I can't even remember what we are working on exactly. However, suddenly I had this like grief coming through and this anger from abandonment. So apparently what I felt back then was my father abandoned me. That's the story that I have.
Mhm.
And I was holding on to the story that I'm being abandoned. I'm not loved. I'm not wanted. I'm not good enough, especially by men. And I wonder why I had such an awful relationship with men. It's like suddenly everything just like, oh my God, like this is what's happening. And what
Yeah.
was even more interesting in the process is I realized that I'm also angry with SARS as part of this. So basically, I'm angry with everyone, including source,
Mm.
divine God, whatever you want to call it. So that's kind of, I think, is like the turning point of the real grieving, if you may. that started. So from then, I did a lot of modalities, and part of it that really helped me heal is really letter writing, because it really gave me that space to say everything that I couldn't have said, and to have the response back in a way that I never could have the response. So that gave me like a sense of
Who
completion.
did you write a letter to? Because I know that
So
there's the idea of writing the letter to your dad.
yeah, I wrote a
Is that
letter
what you
to my
did?
dad. And
Mm.
then the second part was, I imagine if I'm my dad, what will I reply to me?
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, so I
And
feel
that
the second
helped.
part is the completion. Yeah, the first one is just kind of
Hmm.
release, right? And also what helped was, actually this was done with Roger Curtis, which you know him too.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah, amazing guy.
Yeah.
So he also asked us to write using the non-dominant hand, so we bypass the logic. It's not about having to be able to read what you write.
Hmm.
It's more important to feel
Yeah.
into the emotion. So that was basically, this whole thing is like that turning point. And then it's not a one-time thing, right? So it was kind of like over the years, layers and layers and layers of healing. However, I know that I have kind of moved past the point of that grief when I realized it during memorial, like when we host yearly memorial.
Hmm.
And so I used to feel like I lost him, right? So I will cry every memorial. And then there was this 1 year where I was feeling I'm celebrating him, like I'm celebrating his liberation from whatever suffering he has, and celebrating his new path, his new journey, whatever you want to call it. But
Hmm.
this grief suddenly changed to celebration. And I was like, oh my God, this is new. So I felt like we are
Yeah.
celebrating a birthday every year now.
Mm.
And it's funny because tomorrow we are going to host a
It,
memorial, and we are having
oh,
the conversation today. I know, right?
oh, and that's interesting because I readjusted our talk a little bit to make sure I included your dad in that.
Exactly,
That's quite,
exactly.
yeah. That call that is it coincidence? But listen, for
Hmm.
people who are listening who, are from the Western world who don't exactly know what you talk about this memorial service. I mean, yeah. Okay, so I do.
Oh,
I watch
okay.
K-dramas. I watch C-dramas. So I do it. I do it. I'm addicted. Um, I learn a lot from them. So the memorial is one of the things that, I see on there, but can you explain exactly what this is in your tradition?
So for us, there's so many memorial in a year, by the way. But just for this particular one, the idea was just to, I think it's literally that name, right? Memorial is like to remember the memory. That's how I interpreted it. I mean, the Chinese tradition has a different story around it, which I'm not buying into. But for me, the way I see it is just remembering the memory, the good times we had, and knowing that,
But
like, yes, he
do
made.
you have like a small altar set up with their
Yeah, yeah,
picture,
yeah. So
or do
there
you
is an
go to the
altar.
graveyard or, hmm,
Yeah, so it depends. Some people go to the graveyard or wherever you keep the ashes or urn.
yeah.
And then for me, because we splash his ashes in the ocean, so we don't keep a
Okay.
physical thingy. So
Hmm.
it's just like a representation with a name, and we will have this whole spread, which we already prepared, and we have to burn money. Apparently, they need money in the underworld in the Chinese tradition. So for the past one
Food
month,
too. That's supposed to be the one day
yeah,
they can eat as well, isn't it?
yeah, yeah, and like, yeah, so that's why we are gonna offer food and all the favorite food that apparently he loved when he was alive, and then incense, and then, oh, and then yeah, burning money. And this will be interesting for the non-Chinese or non-Asian. Like, we were gonna burn like paper, but then the paper is gonna represent money and car and house and clothes, whatever. Nowadays, they even have an entire apartment with a
Wow.
convenience store that you can burn. I was like, oh my God, he's gonna be a rich landlord down there. Like, it's a freaking apartment. Like, no joke. Like, I was like, oh,
He's
you
not going
can
to want to
always
be
be rich later
reborn.
on.
Life is fine
Exactly.
in the underworld. They have no need, not underworld, but in the other world, and no need
Yeah.
to be reborn.
Yeah, that's interesting
Okay,
because
well
they call
that
it underworld, but obviously, we don't. That's why I say I
yeah.
don't buy into that, but I'm just sharing for the fun fact.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's good. Well, I'm glad that you'll be able to celebrate your father tomorrow instead of mourning him
Mm-hmm.
because I had something happen to me a while back. I mean, because it feels like I've never actually had time to mourn some of the people in my life who've died. And one of them was my grandmother, who was very, very close to me. I mean, she lived right next door to me. She's the person who took care of me. I was dumped on her whenever my mom would go to work and I used to go to her little coffee clutches. This is back when I was, I don't know, 6. Anyway, she died and, I felt like I never really grieved her. And then in Singapore one time, I don't think I knew you at the time, but I decided to go through this grief process. And it was just remembering everything about her and just sort of thanking her for, what she did for me and telling her how much I loved her. And for something like 2.5, 3 hours, I was just bawling. I would remember sitting in my bed and I'm just thinking about her and just crying and crying and crying and not thinking that, wow, I didn't realize I was this sad about her.
Mm-hmm.
And in 2 days, I ended up in the hospital with pneumonia. So,
Mm.
they say grief is held in the lungs.
Okay.
And so I'm a little bit afraid to do that kind of exercise again because I don't want to end up in the hospital again. Because yeah, I had this, I never ever get sick like that. I mean, it's rare that something like that happens. And yeah, I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, is this pneumonia and ending up with this terrible fever and in the hospital over my birthday on top of it.
Mm-hmm.
um, is it because of the grief process I went through? So your grief process sounds a little bit more, um, let's see, not so hospital inducing, maybe. I don't know, but it seems softer, a softer way. So maybe that's, 'cause we're going to go talk about tools later. Maybe that's a tool we can just review again, what you did to pass on. Okay. So, you worked in banking, right? So most people would think, banking, that's a steady job, why would I ever want to get out of banking other than the fact it might be boring? But um, but people think that that's a steady income, why? So why did you give it up? Why did you give it up and make such a huge change and start traveling in what you call your version of Eat, Pray, Love, which, I want you to explain. What exactly is that, Julia Roberts?
I don't remember writing that actually. So it's when you brought it up,
Oh,
I'm like,
it's
oh,
in you
I
you
wrote
need to
that.
look up your
Yeah,
website.
yeah. You know how you just wrote, how you just were so in the flow and you write something and you're like, I wrote that. You sure? Anyway, so I was in banking for 7 years and never liked my job since day one. So 7 years is a long time for doing what you doing what I didn't like, right?
Okay,
So I
stop
always
stop right there. Wait, I just have to pop in. If you didn't like it from day one, why did you accept it? Was it just like a financial
because I
thing? You
didn't know
needed to
what I
do it?
want.
Okay. All right,
You
continue.
know,
Sorry.
yeah, no, no worries. Because I was actually getting to the exact same point that
Okay.
I knew what I didn't want. I didn't know what I want. So I take what I
Mm,
had, right? And also because I studied finance. So it was just like the typical good girl, you graduate from school and then you get a good job. And banking at the time was like it was before all the crisis. So it was a time when banking was like a promising job, if you may. And yeah, I didn't like it since day one. I always knew I wanted to own my own business, but then again, what business? So anyway, I had that thought for the whole
mm,
7 years, never get around doing anything, and kind of like try things here and there, but never come into full fruition. So until a day where I had this like huge argument with one of my colleagues, and it just triggered the hell out of me. Like I went to the toilet cubicle and I cried there for 1 hour because I think it
Oh,
was like a pent up 7 years grief or something. And my body was shaking. I couldn't stop crying. Basically, it's like I knew I was
Mm.
working, so I should stop, but I couldn't. So it was a good 1 hour. My body was shaking. And I remember when I was done crying, and I stand because I was hiding in the handicap toilet. So sorry for whoever that actually needed like the toilet at the time. But like, so like how in the handicap toilet you had like the mirror. And I remember when I was standing up, I look at the mirror, right? Because naturally, and I looked horrible, like horrible. And I was like, and I remember looking at my eyes, and I was like, I looked like a dead fish. Like there was no spark, there was no excitement, like it was just dead fish literally. And I was like, never, ever, ever again. Like, do I told myself there and then, never, never, never again. Let me see these eyes.
Yeah.
So I knew then something has to change. And being very logical, I didn't quit my job immediately. So I gave myself maybe 2 weeks to ponder on it, although the decision was pretty much made. So I quit my job 2 weeks later, didn't have a backup plan, didn't know what to do. And yeah, so that moment of
And did
enough
people
and
want
enough.
to know why you were quitting? I mean, what did you tell the people,
Well, I
why you were
just tell
leaving?
them I can't remember what I tell them. I think I tell them that I wanted to explore something new or something like that. I can't remember.
Mm.
I'm giving something very political, I'm sure. I can't remember exactly what I
Yeah,
said.
exactly. It's
But
not like I hate you people.
exactly. But actually it's a commonly known thing that I had an argument with that guy. So
Mm.
most people were under the impression I quit because of him, but that is not true because he was more like a trigger. You know, he's not that important that I quit because of him, if you know what I mean. But people were
Yeah.
under that impression. So, and some people were under the impression that I had a new offer, obviously, and things like that. It doesn't matter what they think, but like basically, I quit. Like one of my manager actually even said, you can take your letter back, like and get. I'll pretend I didn't hear it and didn't see it if you want to take it back. And I'm not taking it back. In fact, I'm like, if I can leave tomorrow, I'm leaving tomorrow.
Mm.
Yeah, so that's kind of my story in a nutshell. Yeah.
Okay. But all the time that you were experiencing this angst at your job, you were also exploring this aspect of spirituality and personal development,
Yeah.
correct?
I just didn't
Yeah.
have the quote unquote
So,
answer yet.
yeah. So I guess it was a bit hard to marry the two worlds in a
Mm-hmm.
sense.
Mm-hmm.
Mm. Okay. So, um, did your colleagues support you? Did your family support you when you did this? I mean, because that's I mean, I think about, when I lived in Singapore, how, you're so groomed to be a certain way. And then when you get out of the norm of what your parents have wanted you to do, that's not good. That's not
Mm-hmm.
filial piety. So for you, I mean, how did your mom, and I don't know who else is in your family, but how did your family accept that? And did they understand? And did they understand this whole other aspect of you that you also were exploring?
No, my mom didn't understand it. She couldn't understand exactly like what you said earlier. She couldn't understand why would someone quit a steady income job, a stable job, and without a backup plan. Then she couldn't, and we came from a background where passion is not in the vocabulary in my
Mm.
Asian family bringing, like what is passion? What is hobby? We put food on the table. That's what we do. That's the kind of upbringing I was. No, literally,
I've never
I
heard that
asked,
expression.
really? No, that's okay. That's my version,
That's
but
new.
no, but I remember asking my father as a child. I asked him, "What is your hobby?" And you need to understand, I'm very little, maybe like 5 years old or something. I probably just learned the word hobby. So I
Mm.
was asking my father, what's your hobby? And he said, "What is hobby? There is no hobby. My hobby is whatever that brings money, something like that." And I was shocked as a
Uh,
child, as a 5 years old, like that is hobby. That is not hobby. So that's like just to give you the context, right? So it took, I think for the entire 1 year, my mom took every opportunity that she had when she saw me or called me to ask, "Are you going back to work? Are you going back to work? Are you going to back to work?" And I think at some point she gave up. And I don't know what makes her give up asking, but at some point she just suddenly stopped asking. And probably because I shifted, so she shifted. I don't know about that, but
Mm.
eventually it worked out. That's why I say my tenacity works.
But
Yeah,
you had left Indonesia and you were in Singapore working. So, I mean, you had already
yeah.
taken some really courageous step, to, okay, I guess people who are in Singapore go, yeah, well, Indonesia is just, across, just across the way. So it's not that far. But, it's a different country you moved there on your own. It was a job. I mean, I don't know if you had any friends there at the time. So that was also a whole lifestyle change, a whole new group of friends, a whole new way of having to learn how to deal with life as well. I mean, because I didn't you tell me that you lived in a small room for a while, or I can't remember when you first moved to Singapore and you weren't.
I moved to
'Cause,
Singapore when I
in the
was
Western world, we all
13.
think, oh, we have our own apartments or we rent apartments with
Ah,
friends or, we have houses that we rent or whatever. And I think it's quite different. Or, there's a group of people who rent an apartment. So, I mean, how was that for you? Were you physically alone in that aspect as well and not being able to go home and have people you can talk to or
so I moved to Singapore when I was 13. I moved with a friend. So I had a
exactly.
friend
Okay. So
and
that's very young.
yeah, yeah. And we stay in what we call a boarding house. So it's like there are nine of us in one house. So we are sharing rooms.
Mm.
And definitely it wasn't easy when I was younger. But then eventually I started to like the freedom of being away from home because remember I came from a very, very restricted traditional Asian family. And yeah, but eventually I get used to being away from home because I actually am the one who asked to go away. I'm
Oh,
not being
okay.
sent. I asked it. I asked for it because
Okay.
I wanted a better education. That's like the correct answer. But actually I think I just want some adventure and freedom. I'm bored
Mm.
in my hometown. I was rather, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's interesting because, it's not everybody who at 13 years old. Okay, yeah, so you hear boarding schools, but you literally went to a boarding house and you didn't stay at a school. You were, literally
Mm-hmm,
having to
mm-hmm.
live alone with your friend or with similar people. But anyway, so I'm sure that that's also an experience that plays into all your decisions as well, um, about, who you are today. So you ended up in Bali during COVID of all places, correct?
Yeah. Yes,
So
yes.
most people listening to this would be like, wow, why did I end up in Bali during COVID instead of stuck in my house? You know? So, I mean, how did that happen? And I mean, why were you there? What did you do during these 3 years? And then also talk about you talk about a silent day when you were looking up at the stars and you suddenly had this realization about being a starseed.
Mm-hmm. I actually moved to Bali from Singapore to Bali, right? I moved to Bali for maybe like a good 6 months. And I was still flying back to Bali and Singapore at the time because I was still in a relationship with a guy. And then I actually moved back to Singapore, deciding to leave Bali. But then when we went back, eventually we broke up. So I was like, okay, since I broke up, there is no reason to be in Singapore. I went back to Bali again, and then 1 month later, COVID hit. I didn't know COVID is coming, but the universe knows. So that's how I ended up in Bali, thanks to the breakup in that sense, right? Yeah, and I don't feel called to go to Bali. That's what it was. I have always like being envious of people who are living by the beach and living this online freedom lifestyle kind of things. So I always wanted to try that and go to Bali. So that's why and how I ended up there. And during that 3 years, a lot of things happened. Specifically, around the silent day that you were reading about. So there was this one day in a year in Bali where for the whole night we have to turn off all electricity, not electricity, sorry, all of the lights. So no lights in the house. It's meant to be dark except for hotels.
That's not world, what is it? World, oh, what is that day called where everybody turns off their electricity at a certain, but it's only for 1 hour. So is it
No,
related to
yeah, that's
that or
daylight
is it
savings,
something
I think,
else?
was it? Yeah, there was
No,
something
no.
else. Not daylight savings, something
Okay.
else. Yeah, but I know what you're saying. No, this is whole night, like
Oh,
whole night,
okay.
literally. So you
And
have to
why do
walk
they
with
do
candle
that?
in the house because the Balinese had this belief that if I get this correct, because it might not be accurate. This is what I think it is. And the Balinese has this belief that on that day, I think the evil is coming out to harm people. So you have to turn off the light to hide from them, something like that. And then the next day is the day the light
That's
come over.
scary.
I know. And the next day is the day that the light come over. I don't know. I just knew like it was this funny thing. That's why I say I might be wrong, but that's the version I heard. Because again, you will hear it from different people and they will tell you different version. So that's like the
Okay, so
version I
listeners,
heard.
go look up what is the silent day in Bali, just so you know for sure. So maybe you want to
Yeah,
make sure
yeah,
you're not there when that
exactly.
happens.
But then yeah, but it was quite I mean once you get used to it, it was pretty fun because you never get such at least I come from Singapore, which is a big city. You can barely see the stars.
Mm,
It
yeah.
is filled with lights, right? So you get this rare day where there was no traffic. You don't hear any traffic because you're not supposed to go up too. And then there was no light. So for the first time ever, I saw Milky Way in Bali. It's not something I thought I
Wow.
could see in Indonesia, right? I thought
Mm,
I had to go to Australia or something.
yeah.
And I was even asking the housemate I was in, is that the Milky Way? And he's like, yeah, 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 it is. I'm like, am I imagining things or like
Is that some
is
kind
it
of
real? No, or is it my glasses maybe? Anyway, so I remember it was only 7 p.m., which is very early for stargazing. So I
Hmm.
was lying there and I was just looking up, and then I felt this just strong calling and pulling home. Like I just felt this energy flushing through my entire body, this divine love that I've never felt like that before. And it felt so at home. And at that moment, I'm like, I'm home. I never even know what that means, but like I'm home, not because I'm in a place, not because I'm with someone, but I'm just home in this body right here, right now. And then that's year one. And then I think the year after, on the same silent day again, I look up at the stars again. This time there is no Milky Way, but then I woke up at this weird 4 a.m. and then I saw the stars and I heard like an inner voice, not actual physical voice, but like inner voice telling me like, you are home. We are always, always, always with you. We have never left you. You have never left us. You are, you are home basically. So it's like the reiteration of the same message, except that I have more awareness this time around to know that, oh, I'm starseed and this is my star mothers, my star family talking to me. The first time around was more like a fancy stargazing, if you know what I mean. Yeah, so that's kind of my aha moment that happened in Bali, specifically around, the silent day and the stars.
So, what were you doing for these 3 years in Bali? I mean, were you doing any kind of practices or are you just like chilling out on the beach or eating really good food that they have there or, avoiding the monkeys in that forest that's in the middle there? But those monkeys are scary. I've been there. So, what were
Yeah,
you doing?
everything actually. Definitely actually it's interesting you asked this. This is something I've never shared before. I got over my fear of drowning. And I felt like that's the
Oh,
maybe the only reason I was in Bali. I I love the ocean, but I'm so afraid to get drowned. Irony, right? So um I decided to learn surfing, and obviously, surfing requires me to be quite deep into the water in the middle of the
Mm.
sea. And then there is this big wave coming in, and then when you fall down, you get rolled over under the wave like a washing machine. It was crazy shit. I was so afraid. But then the
Did
only
you
way to
already
surf
know
is
how to
to
swim? You already
no.
knew how to
So
swim, though.
no.
Oh,
So in order
okay.
to surf,
Whoa.
I learned to swim. That's how much determination I had. I can swim, but very weakly using like
Mm.
the breaststroke, which isn't enough for the ocean. So I had to go and learn the freestyle to make sure, like, just in case. So I learned to swim to learn how to surf. And the whole time I was learning how to surf with a coach, I was terrified from the first lesson to the last lesson. But I could feel also that fear are like dissipating, and I'm being more and more comfortable in the water, and that fear of water is gone. I can't say 100%, but a good 80% is gone compared to what was before. And the funny thing is, a year before I took up surfing, I almost drowned in Bali for the second time in my life. So the first time I drowned when I was young. I almost drowned. I didn't drown. So obviously that was like the first trauma. And the second time I almost drowned again in Bali. And that was like the second trauma. And probably if there is such thing as past life, I believe it was all the way back. But yeah, I think that's like a aha moment for me. This is unexpected. I didn't
Hmm.
thought this would be the aha moment from Bali, but I think at this point it came to me. If this is the only reason, it's enough. Yeah.
Hmm.
So, but yeah, but I
So,
was also exploring the spiritual stuff to answer your question. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's really brave to be able to face your fears that way. I mean, that's not something that everybody can do. And I mean, when you talk about water, I mean, I grew up in the Bahamas. I was, on a tiny island surrounded by water, and I remember um, somebody had predicted that there was going to be a tidal wave, which is in that area of the world they call it a tidal wave, but basically it's the same thing as a tsunami. And I don't know
Mm.
how old I was. I must have been 10 years old. And my sister and her friend thought it was super funny to keep telling me, "Oh yeah, the tidal wave is coming. Tidal wave is coming. We're all gonna die." So I was thinking, and I remember going to church that night, going, "Pray, please, 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 I'm too young to die." I mean, but I was afraid of water, and I've had dreams all my life about uh, tidal waves and water rising. I
Mm.
mean, I can't tell you how many repetitive dreams I've had. So, like when you talk about past lives or other
Me too.
lives,
Me too.
I'm thinking something is coming through
I was
there. But
always running away
I'm
from the
still
water in the dream.
I have a healthy respect for the ocean. Because I know, it's a force to be reckoned with, and it's a absolutely gorgeous thing as well, but it's respect. And of course, I'm having seen Jaws when I was little or read the book, and the Jaws was actually filmed in the Bahamas. So going
Oh,
into the water
that doesn't help.
itself, I'm scared to death of sharks. I'm really. So anyway, all right. So you have really evolved in your entire path, your thinking, your beliefs, your journey, your where you live, what you were doing, your work, your friends, your partners, everything since 2005. And now you're back in Indonesia with your mom, right? Living in the
Mhm.
place that you thought was boring. That you said before that you thought was
It's still
boring.
boring too. Yeah.
So how did that happen?
Mm. So after being 3 years in Bali, towards the last year, which is around COVID being gone, so Bali gets really crowded. I already kind of knew I was meant to leave, but I didn't know where. And I thought it would be something fancy. It has to be like fancier than Bali, right? Like, but I didn't get a download, if you may. I just didn't know where. And one fine day, my mom called me and we were talking about things, and she's like, "Actually, why don't you come home?" And I was like, never occurred to me before. Like, because I don't know, I guess I ran away from home at 13, right? Not ran away, but you get what I
Yeah.
mean. Like, I left
Yeah,
home, so
yeah.
it never occurred to me to come back home. And I was like, that's actually a pretty good idea, right? Doesn't have to be forever and ever. Who knows? So I went back home. That's how it happened. And next thing I know, it has been almost 3 years now. And it actually felt so complete to come home. I felt like I'm a sailor coming back to the port to recharge. Is a weird analogy, but that's how I felt. And boy, these 3 years is another spiritual awakening on its own, because trying to live with your mother after being away from her your whole life, that's another
I
story
c-
altogether. That's like,
Your
but
mother
then
isn't in the next room right now.
it's okay. She doesn't understand English. Um, but
Okay.
that's like the best. I often say, like, I think this is like the most effective spiritual course if you need one. Like, just live with your mother or your father or
Yeah.
whoever, whoever that you cannot get along, live with them. You will know how zen you are or you are not. Like how zen or not you are.
Okay. So, um, tell me what you're doing now, because you like, I think at the time when you came to see me in Belgium, you were doing some coaching, and then you were doing a lot of goddess work, and I think you might have been doing readings as well, and you're doing light language because we know how that happened, and then it
Mm-hmm.
evolved. And I mean, you're doing a number of different things, and as you talk about them, I want you to also answer this question because, for anybody listening to this, when they start listening to what you do now, they might go, oh, what the heck is that? So, and that's that labeling that people have of, these types of things as woo. So kind of, these things that you are doing now and have evolved into, how did, because I mean, think even you yourself at some point thought, this is woo, I'm not sure I want to go down that
Mm-hmm.
path. And how do you deal with people who are thinking what you're doing is woo or not serious?
Uh-huh. So what I do now is I help starseed, healer, and visionary to remember their calling, activate their gifts, and to share their offerings with the world. And that happens
So
through
what is
different
this star seed? Because
processes.
some people don't know what a star
Mm-hmm.
seed is. So what is
Mm-hmm.
that?
So for me, the way I define starseed is those soul who believe or feel that they come from other places other than Earth, in what you call the past life, if you may. Like that's their soul origin, they come from the stars. So that's what starseed is in my definition. And so I help a lot of these people to remember why they are here, who they are, and what they are here for. And they don't necessarily have to be starseed. I also work with people who don't necessarily relate to that, although those are mainly who felt called to work with me. So yeah, that's what I help them do in a nutshell. As you said, I use tools like light language, EFT tapping, Akashic clearing, alongside with somatic healing and whatever that is appropriate for the person. Because I've been doing this since 2016. So like whatever that help this person is the tool. There is no one right tool. And to answer the question about being woo, the way I handle being woo is to become more woo. And that I
I'm
know it sounds
such a
weird, but
goddess.
like, because
the,
apparently
the goddess, where's my crown?
I know, like, because I have realized exposure therapy works for me. Like, I overcome water by going to the water. I mean, that works for me. It might not works for other
Mm.
people, but it works for me. So when I started coming out and talking about angel. Oh, okay. So when I was transiting into spiritual coaching, I started with talking about angel healing first, and then when I think it's okay, I become even more woo by talking about starseed, and then I started to talk about light language. So I just keep on adding, keep on adding. Before you can catch up with my wooness, I keep on adding. So that's kind of how I deal with it. But it's not easy because there were periods that I was hiding. I was not talking about light language to people and things like that. I I never hide in front of my client, but I will hide in marketing where, everybody can see me and judge me. Because with my client, I feel safe. You already pay me. That means
Yeah.
you trust me with, whatever I'm going to do. But in it publicly, it wasn't easy. But as I said, the way I do it is I keep kind of pushing the limit a little bit more at a time. But the big thing for me is to really realize that it really doesn't matter because people are gonna think I'm weird either way. So I might as well become more weird as I get, as time passes by. Because I just come to a point to realize, especially since I realize I'm a starseed, that's when I really come into the acceptance. I'm the odd one out. I'm that weird one out. It's okay. It's okay.
So listen, all these things that you do, the Akashic records, the somatic healing, EFT, the EFT tapping,
Yeah.
um, and light language. I mean, what is the goal? What the person who is at the receiving end of your therapies, what is the goal with them? Is it to make them realize they're a star seed, or do they come to you with something specific, or what? I mean, what is the main purpose of doing all of that?
So there is it's different for each person. However, the main big underlying is just a remembrance process, a soul remembrance journey to help you remember what is already within you. There is nothing new that I'm teaching. There is nothing new you are learning. You remember whatever you need to. Maybe it is an activation of light language, which is like something that is already inside of you. Or maybe it is reclaiming your own voice to learn how to speak your truth and really share your message with the world. Maybe it's remembering why you are here. I have a client who remember all the way back to like her star origin and being with her star family, and like this whole conversation as to she remembered she agreed to come here to spread the light and share the light through whatever she was meant to be doing, which in her case was, I think one of them was doing drumming and another one I can't remember what she does exactly at the point, because she has evolved by now, but she remember like they remember like that specifics, and there is no specific intention because you will always get exactly what you need, not what your mind thinks you need, if that makes sense. But overall, it's just
Uh-huh.
like awakening remembrance and even healing. Like some people, after they attend a session, they say they feel lighter, they feel clearer, they feel more confident with their direction in life, whatever that is that they want to go forward. So it's really different people, different thing.
Okay. Okay. So for you, how do you divine, excuse me, not divine, but you're going to talk about divine, I'm sure. How do you how do you define spirituality? And is it the same as personal development
Hmm,
for you?
great question. Yeah, I feel they are, I feel spirit, I feel like personal development is a part of spirituality, meaning spirituality is the bigger thing rather than the niche. Because everything is spirit and we are all made of spirit. We are spirit. So spirituality is the big thing. And personal development is one branches of it. The same way that maybe health is one branch of it and another thing is another branch of it if you put an umbrella to it. So that's how I see how they fit into each other. And
Uh-huh.
the definition, I think it's just becoming more of who we truly are, which is the nature of spirit or God or love. And developing into that, I guess. Yeah. Never really thought
Okay.
about the definition, but I think that's coming close to that. Yeah.
Yeah, because I know that not everybody who does personal development, or does alternative therapies necessarily thinks of that as being spiritual, or that they're
Mm,
a spiritual person because they're following
mm,
those ways of, dealing with their life. And then, I mean, the one time it became in Singapore, it became extremely obvious to me, and I was in shock, is that because I knew I always, for me, yoga was, was a spiritual thing. It was about going into yourself, that meditation, feeling into the poses and just kind of trying to let it go and become one with, the earth and the universe. But then I discovered that people were doing yoga just for exercise. I was like, what? But it's true. And, well, fine, I guess, there's nothing wrong with it. It's different strokes for different folks. Okay. So, what are some of the things that you have tried, some of the practices or tools, modalities that you have tried and left behind, and why?
The
They
very
were too
same
woo.
meditation. No, it's the very same meditation I said I fell asleep with. That's the thing I have dropped.
So you
So that
no
was
meditation for you.
no, I do, but not in that specific way. So that
Mm.
meditation is basically sitting in silence for 1 hour and just observing your breath. And it's great. I can do that. I still do that, just not for 1 hour. And
Yeah.
definitely the one thing I drop, I can do it for 1 hour though, just to clarify. It's just not, I don't find it beneficial. And this is what I'm going to explain because when I started my spirituality journey, spiritual journey, one of the things that I keep hearing people tell me is meditate on it, meditate on it. Whatever answer you need, you meditate on it, meditate on it. And I tell you what, I sit there and there is nothing, absolutely nothing and nothing. And I was like, I'm not sure if this is working. And then I was like, maybe it's not working for me and it's fine. And I started so many other modalities. And you know when I get the most answer sometimes? When I was showering, when I was walking, when I was about to go to sleep. I don't need to sit 1 hour to get the answer. If any, it is blocking the answer because it's like I sit there, give me the answer, give me the answer, give me the answer. Where is the answer? And I'm like, there is nothing. And I just end up like, oh my God, this doesn't work, right? So that is what didn't work for me, and that is what I dropped.
Yeah.
Probably it's not so much about the modality than how you use it. In this case, I'm using it to get an answer. And
Uh-huh.
yeah, so that's the one thing I dropped.
Okay. And what is still working for you? I mean, what are the actual tools that you use? You do tapping and you do journaling. Do
Mhm.
you read cards for yourself? I mean, what are these other tools that you yourself do like on a daily or weekly basis that you feel continue to help you with your spiritual development and growth and your personal development?
I have a whole long list of that because I love to
Mm,
change them up. Believe it, like I don't have a fixed ritual like you must wake up and meditate for 90 minutes. No such thing. Like yes, I will wake up and connect with myself. How will I do that? It depends on how I feel for the day, and then the tool will drop in. So it can be anything from sitting in silence for 5 to 10 minutes and EFT tapping or guided meditation, light language, Kundalini yoga, breath work, somatic healing, chanting, singing, dancing, swimming, walking. It's endless. So as I say, because I believe like spirituality is in everything, and it's about
mm,
slowing down in each moment. If that is even a tool, like having the ability to, in between calls, like I had a riverside call before our call. In between, what did you do? Like, did you go and scroll on Instagram, or did you just
yeah,
allow yourself that 5 minutes for yourself? To me,
yeah.
that is a healing modality. That 5 minutes of silence in between, and yeah. So those everything that I listed is what I'm still doing, and they are still working for various reasons. And yeah, it's gonna take forever to explain them, but if I could just share something, it's like how do you know if it works is to really try it for yourself. Like don't take my words or anybody words for it,
Yeah,
and give it a try,
exactly.
meaning not just once, maybe at
Mm,
least give it like a few times. And if it really doesn't work, it doesn't work. And then if you are meant to do that, it will come back to you some way or another.
mm. Yeah, I have a question how you feel about this because this is something I used to find, sometimes you would see people who do spiritual practices. There's like this smorgasbord of things that they've studied and done and certified this, certified in that. And I always used to tell people that, you know, don't jump into everything at the same time. Try one thing for a while and see if it works for you. And then try something else. Because if you start combining and mishmash, you never really actually know what's working for you. So, I mean, do you have work that way as well?
Yes, exactly. That's how I work. And all the tools I mentioned is because I've been on the journey for a long time. That's why it's like a long list. But I actually took the time to dive deep into each and every one. Even if it's not at one go, I might come back to it eventually to deepen it. But
Hmm.
yeah, I often say to try one time. So for example, if someone come to my light language session, I will also say like, and I actually probably heard this from you, actually, to with the angel healing. I think we learned this in Belvaspata that, give it like a good 10 days or 2 weeks,
Yeah.
whatever the amount is, to let everything integrate and settle before you move on to another stage. And this is actually a very logical way to do things. Like, it's not just in spirituality. If you think about it, even with food, if you want to know if you're allergic to something, you actually have
Mm,
to take one thing out at a time, not take everything. You
yep,
take one thing out and test,
exactly.
is this the thing? And then the other way. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. So,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to recap that, it's not saying that, okay, so you study angel healing or you study yoga or whatever, and you have to drop them and start something and take on something new. It's just that you keep doing them if they work for you, and then you add and see if that works along with the things that you're already doing. And if it doesn't, then you leave it. And then you might find that some things you were doing in the past don't work for you anymore. I mean, I have that obviously because I don't do everything that I was doing before. So,
Yeah.
I
And
mean,
some,
and it's okay. It's okay to evolve, It's okay
yeah,
because you're having new experiences all the time. So, the stuff that you tried 10 years ago is not necessarily pertinent to where you are now.
exactly.
Yeah.
Some stay with you for a lifetime, some stay with you for a moment,
Yeah.
and that's okay.
Yeah. So, let's see. So, what can you tell people who are considering giving up their steady income to go into a practice that is wellness or self-development or spiritual based? I mean, what would you tell somebody who is thinking about doing that? What advice?
I would say to drop the either or mentality, because a lot of people are afraid because it's either I do or I die. So if I don't make it, I die. That's why they are so afraid to actually live, because there's always in between, right? So if for whatever reason you don't feel comfortable quitting for your job right now, then don't quit. Like, you can take a
Mm,
part-time, you can start your wellness practice part-time, or the other way, you can do a full-time wellness and do a part-time job, then bring the income. There are always ways to go around things, to not be fixated on the one path, because there is no one path. I think that's what
mhm,
trick people up, that there is only one way around this, and it's all or nothing. Is not like there is an in between that you can dance about. So yeah, that's what I would say. However, above all, really is just that point of trusting what is being laid out in front of you, and taking one step at a time, and the next one and the next one.
okay, yeah, that's good advice. But what about the people who really can't stand their job anymore and just want to quit? Like you did. I mean, I've had that experience before too, and it really feels crappy. You spend so much of your time at work that it feeds, it spills over into other parts of your life. So, I mean, if you're unable, well, I guess I'm answering my own question. That as I'm asking you this question, I'm thinking, oh, that could be an answer. Um, so for that kind of person, what would you recommend? You
Mm-hmm.
really don't like your job, but you can't you can't quit it, you know? For
Mm-hmm.
financial reasons, you can't. What would you do if you
So
were
for
in that
me at
position?
the time, I won't say so much this is an advice, but it's just my personal experiences at the time.
Hmm.
What I did was I quit knowing that I could always go back to the night. Like I could always apply for another job if I need to. So that's actually what helped me to quit, knowing that, maybe it's just a 1 month break. I can come back to this. But obviously I didn't go back to it.
Hmm.
But that gave me
Yeah.
like that extra push to know, that's why I say it's not all or nothing. It's not like you quit once and forevermore and you're gonna stay broke forever. Like you can always apply for another job the same way you apply for this one. So if you needed that even 1 week break, if that's what would help, maybe consider doing that.
Yeah. And I guess while you're in the job that you hate, that you explore all these other options because there might be a tool that helps you to deal with your job and the discomfort that you have in your job.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe
Mm-hmm.
it's not that you have to stop working, it's maybe that you just have to shift something in yourself as well.
Yeah,
And
exactly.
yeah.
That's something I would just want to add as well. I think we are in sync. Is that also understanding that if you're just escaping from the job, it's not gonna solve the problem. So whatever it is that actually you are going through, it still goes back to the inner work. So of course, finding your passion, it helps, but just be mindful that you're not just escaping something specifically because it will just manifest into your next job, whatever that next job is.
Okay, so what would you, let's see, for people who don't know what practice that they should start with. And you and I know that there's just so many. I mean, even if you want to do Reiki, which one do you do? Because there's not just one Reiki. There's, I don't know, 10 different ones. So for somebody who is wanting to follow a practice, how do you recommend them starting out choosing?
I would say to always experience it for yourself first and not just like taking a certification for the sake of, try it for yourself first. So if it is Reiki, for example, go for Reiki session and have it for 1 month,
Mm,
2 months. And then if you really love it and you feel like, oh my God, I want to deepen it, and then go ahead. Doesn't mean you have to be a practitioner, but just try it for yourself because it's about embodiment and experience. It's not, like you can take a Reiki course and be certified in 1 day, right? But it's not about that. It's about actually
yeah.
really experiencing it for yourself. That's how you choose
Mm,
based on your own experience, how you feel, and your own transformation. Like if you don't feel any transformation with it, then maybe you don't really like it anyway and you won't pursue it, if that makes sense. Usually, at least for me, the thing that I continue practicing is because I see the benefit. So I continue. So that's kind of how you determine for yourself.
okay, great. That's good advice. Okay, so what are some tools or exercises for anyone listening that you can recommend for them that work for you that they can explore further? And maybe there's a tool that you can walk somebody through how it works so that they can actually do that exercise at home to see how it is for them. So not just say, okay, yeah, there's EFT tapping, you could do that, but maybe, um, take them through a small exercise that they could do on their own or
Mhm.
however you do something. That makes sense.
So one thing that I do every day still till now, this is the one thing that is always there every day. So the rest of the tools have their showtime, right? But this is like constant. And that is journaling. Because I feel writing is really healing. It clears my mind, it heals my heart, and a lot of time, a lot of clarity comes out. And there are so many ways you can journal. You can have a journal prompt, or you can do bullet journaling or free flow. I personally love free flow because for me, the whole point is to dump everything on my head onto the paper so that it's not taking up my mental space. That's how I have, that's why I feel very spacious because I dump it on the paper and not keep it in my head. So I will start my day
So
or
so
end
what
my
is
day.
what is journaling? I mean,
Yeah,
what is
yes,
journaling? I mean, I'm
I'm
hearing
gonna get into
journal,
it.
newspaper. What is that?
So I start my day or end my day depending on when you want to journal just by dumping everything that is on your head onto the paper. That's journaling, like free flow writing. That's one way to do it. So,
Hmm.
I'm feeling tired now. I'm feeling fat. Or like, or I enjoyed today's conversation with Regina, whatever, kind of whatever that you hear, your inner thoughts, you just write it down. Not forever because you don't want to go down the rabbit hole. Maybe, give it one page or two just to kind of get it off the system. And then you can kind of finish it up by choosing something more empowering, like, okay, but how about what went well today? What do I like about today? So it depends on your free flow journaling. Sometimes you are already writing about good stuff if you're in a good mood. But let's say you're in a bad mood and you write down all the not so good stuff, then you just find something like the silver lining, right? What went well today? What is just the one thing that went well that I appreciate and I love today. And I love also to end it with like, well done, Alice. Well done for this and well done for that. Well done. Like just kind of like, even well done for waking up early today, things like that. That's like little tips. So there are so many ways you can journal, but just that's one way you can get started if you haven't already. If you have already started, then you can use journal prompts that you find online or anywhere else, or even try the letter writing that I was sharing earlier. But that probably will take more like holding space for yourself and holding your emotions. So as a start, I would say
Hmm.
journaling is a great place. Yeah.
So, do you ever not do it? Do
Pardon?
you do it every day? Do you do it
Journaling?
every day? Yeah.
Yes.
Or
Yes.
do you ever not do it?
Whatever not do it? Rarely, really, honestly.
Hmm.
That's why I say this is one of the practice that's always there. The rest, they're like, they come and go, but journaling, yeah. I think it's because I tend to be, because I'm a Gemini, I think. No, I'm not, I think it's related to being Gemini. It's like I have a lot of thoughts on my head in general. So journaling for me really just cleared that stuff out. Because I don't like
Hmm.
having this monkey
Okay.
chatter in my money. So I'll just write it down and like, off you go. I give you the airtime now. Like journaling is like, I'm giving you the airtime. You have it, but then
Uh-huh.
off you go, right? Like, and then I can get about my day.
Okay. Great. And do you need to do it with a pen?
Yeah,
Can
for me,
you
yeah, I
speak
feel it's
into a
more.
microphone? Can you record yourself,
Ah,
or
yeah,
can
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah.
do it with a type, or does it have to be pen and ink the old-fashioned way?
For me, pen and paper works, and speaking works. Doesn't You don't even have to record it. You can just speak to yourself. And but I don't really like writing on laptop. It feels very left brainy. It gets me on the left brain. But maybe it works for
Mm.
you. Again, try it for yourself, then you will know if there is any difference between on paper or desktop. Maybe there's no difference, but for me, there is a huge difference. Maybe because of my banking job, I don't know. But like, to get into the feeling, I really need to be having that pen and paper movement.
Okay. So everybody, you hear that? Try that tool for journalism. Not journalism. Maybe journalists don't want to use that tool because they're writing all the time. I don't know. Anyway, so journaling is a tool. There's been some beautiful journals that you can buy out there that make you inspired and actually want to write in them. So that actually helps, I find. When you
Yeah.
find some beautiful art, and but some people are just fine with plain old notepads or whatever, note paper. But I think that somebody in marketing realized that what makes people want to write is, having this beautiful book that you can open up and write and draw as well. You don't have to just write your
Mm-hmm.
thoughts. You can draw them out as well.
Mm-hmm.
So try that out. And I'm curious to see how it works for you. And, you can put it in the show comments and reply back and let us know. Or you can contact Elise because right now I want to ask Elise. So where can people find you? You have a website, and I think you have some other social media, and you do hold events, and you do a lot of online stuff. So no, it doesn't matter that you're in Indonesia, and for example, and I'm in Belgium. So how can people get hold of you and
Yeah,
find
you
out
can
more
find
about
me.
you?
Yeah, you can find me on my website, starseedgoddess.com, or my podcast, also Starseed Goddess Podcast, or my Instagram at Elies Hadi. So that's where you can find me and reach out, share your insights from today's episode with me or Regina, either by Instagram or wherever you find me or Regina. We'll be happy to hear your sharing from today and any other questions that you might have.
Yeah, definitely. And all of that information will also be found in the show notes as well, with all the links as well. And please, you're encouraged for feedback, because it not only helps the Wisdom Without the Guru show as well to know what people are looking for, but I think it also helps our guests as well. If you reach out and contact them about something that they have referred to, say, oh, this is great, or, you know, it really worked for me, or why it didn't work. So, and it's good for other people to see that too, because, everybody has something to say. Everybody has an experience to share, and it could be beneficial for somebody else. So, I really encourage people to share, and, in the view of maybe helping somebody else, because you really never know who you're helping when you share that way. Okay, so any final comments, any final advice, any final words you want to say, Elise, to anyone listening?
Hmm.
To me?
The word that just came is just trust, trust, trust. And if you may surrender, that's kind of a little bit like, oh, some people might go like, I'm not surrendering, but trust and surrender if you may. But at least trust. Yeah.
Trust in other people or trust in yourself?
Everything, like trust in the divine, trust in you, trusting the world, trusting in your creation, trusting in your work, everything.
Yeah, because
Or
right now
maybe
I think
journal
there's
on the
a,
word trust as your
yeah.
invitation. Pick up your journal and ask yourself, what does trust mean to me? What does it feel like to trust myself? What does it feel like to trust in love? What does it look like? How does it smell like? What would it mean? How would it change my world if I could trust just by 1% more?
Mm. Yeah, it's true. And especially there's so much going on in the world right now. It definitely, trust is something that globally we need to look at, I think, just on a human level as well
Mhm.
as an individual level. So, Elise, I really want to thank you so much for joining me and sharing your journey and your thoughts and your beliefs and how they've changed, and also the loss of your father, which, I hope that you are able to celebrate him well tomorrow, and that I wish you well in all your projects that you have going forward. And I'm sure that we'll be talking offline just to follow up on some things. And I wish you all the best, and thank you for being here. And I also want to thank everybody who's been listening. Thank you so much for lending an ear and letting us maybe give you some advice and a nugget you can take away. So, wherever you are in the world, have a wonderful and beautiful day.
Thank you, Regina. See you all.